This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody out there listening on KFWB News Talk 980 Los Angeles, our flagship station, or Extreme Talk XM Channel 165, or at the World Wide Web at KLEANradio.com. I got my two of my favorite people out of the 100 in the world.
Oh, wow.
Back with me here tonight, we got Andrew Spanswick.
Yay. Hey, Judah, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back in the studio.
Yeah, and next to me on my right is Jennifer Easy on the Eyes Gimenez.
Hi.
We haven't come up with something new. We're still...
I kind of like it.
Work with what stick with what works. That's
work with what sticks.
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
that's a different show.
That's what she said.
We're a show about addiction and recovery.
Oh my goodness! I hope so.
We are.
And having fun.
And having fun.
That's right.
And having fun in recovery. But one of the things tonight we'd like to hear from people out there that are listening, we'd like to hear success stories. You know, there are people driving around that are listening at home that are sober right now. Call us up. Tell us your story. Sometimes we need to hear these stories. You know, when you're in the industry of helping people, whether you're a doctor, whether you want to hear sometimes the success stories. So give us a call tonight at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. But likewise, you know, if you're struggling, give us a call too.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely here to help and, guide people in the right direction and give them ideas. And also we're here to listen. And also talk to family members, not just people that are in...
Hey, we'll talk to anybody.
Yeah.
That's essentially what we're saying. No matter what you're going through right now, give us a call.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, but here's something very interesting. And Jennifer, you wanted to say a story? You look like you had a story.
I have a couple stories.
Other than the fact that we all bumped into each other the other night at the movies.
That was a little weird.
That was so wild. Like, it was like, I ran into so many people, and then I bump into the two of you.
What's even odder, just so you know, I said to Andrew before the movie started, how many people do you think we're going to know at the movie theater?
And I never bump into anyone when I go to the movies.
It was like...
I'm just like...
So after the movie, we all saw
each other, and you were so not in the mood. And I had my girlfriend with me, and he was like being rude to her, but he was just tired. But she didn't know him, and she's so sweet and innocent. I was like, oh no.
He was actually in a conservative fit because we just watched that
Zero Dark 30,
which was amazing. Yeah. I know you didn't like it.
No. On second opinion, I'm coming around. I'm really enjoying the movie. I encourage everybody out there to go see it. We're not going to pay.
He's rewritten in his mind like 6 times by now.
So just so you know, we're a show about addiction and recovery. So how does this story, Jennifer? No, I'm joking.
It is about functioning in the real world after, because that's a big question that people have.
You're right.
Is what do you do after? Like, do you become boring? Do you become this? Yeah, how can I function? And you can. You know, this weekend after. Friday after I saw you guys, I was at all the Golden Globe events, and I ended up at the BAFTA after party yesterday.
Okay, to people out there that aren't.
Well, it was a golden.
BAFTA.
It's like the British Oscars.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I was at the HBO event, and I ran into so many sober people, and people were coming up to me. Then I went to an art gallery event last night. Then I ended up at the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
It's a rough life.
It was at the Four Seasons, this and that. It was amazing, but there were so many people that were either coming up to me saying, "Thank you for what you do. I've listened to you on the radio," or "I know I watch you on the the rehab shows," and some people that we have helped get sober were there, and working, and it was amazing that it doesn't matter where you're at, you're always going to find people that have the same problem or have gone through the same things or that we've helped, and that's like a really big treat. Like that was a great thing. No matter what, you get to stay true to who you are and learn to have fun and go outside the box, and that's what I felt like I did this weekend, and my life was so fun.
Well, I think also what you're saying is it's a full life.
Yeah. Well, I took Saturday off. Like, I took the whole day off, and I actually went out with Barry, who works with us, and I went to a gun show in Ventura.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was kind of shocked. It was like thousands of guys lining up, mostly guys. There are a few women there. Like
it's like a Rush concert.
Just like buying thousands of rounds of ammo, and they had a beer truck.
Yeah.
So I had to stand like in lines with like people like that just reeked of alcohol buying guns and ammo.
This really isn't a selling point
Yeah.
for why we should keep guns. You might
like-
want to leave the beer truck out for the future.
I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, really, beer at a gun show doesn't sound like the smartest
sort of like
idea.
an oxymoron. It's sort of like a drive-through liquor store.
Yeah, right.
Which I've seen. clean, and
Well,
that's
they're
why
big in New Orleans
Yeah.
still. So
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. We're a show about addiction and recovery, and there's so much topical news in going on right now. We were talking about this on the drive down. And we'll get back to that because I think that you're extremely right, Jen. It's talking about life and sobriety and the funness and the full of it. But we were talking about in New York, they're putting down this major crackdown on say it, Andrew.
assault weapons.
No, I'm not weapons. That too. But they're putting down this thing about pain medication in hospitals. Mayor Bloomberg's
opiates.
trying to limit
Yeah.
the amount of pain medicine.
Right.
And obviously, both you and I don't disagree with this. It's not the government's job to.
Well, it is actually their job to regulate medications, and that's why we have prescriptions,
Right.
and the DEA monitors that through physicians. They have DEA numbers that they're assigned. But there should be a national database, and there should be so that you can't doctor shop and you can't go to multiple doctors, and there is one of those in California. But the doctor has to check it. The pharmacy doesn't check it. So. There needs to be a lot of reform, but like most things in the United States, we pass laws that are not, connected. They're all
really make no
disjointed.
sense, right?
Well, and part of that is because we have states and then we
Right.
have federal government. So the DEA regulates drug distribution through DEA numbers, but it doesn't then monitor the distribution within the state from the pharmacy. So. It's difficult. Although, we've done it with, Sudafed. It's amazing. So,
And listen, I go into Target, they card you.
Yeah, no, they do.
when you buy the computer cleaner.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Well, no, for Sudafed,
they
too.
really
For
do.
huffing. Yeah.
For huffing. But
Yeah.
one of the things
which is
that,
inhaling for people that don't.
But
know
again,
what
don't
huffing
you
is.
think they're getting away from the major issue, which is dealing with mental illness?
Oh, I mean, you look at all of these cases, and
Yeah.
it has to do with mental illness. I mean, I think that's the primary problem, these things are horrible, but with the Newton school shooting, I mean, I don't really know the whole story, but even with all that we do know, but for the mother to have those guns in a state that has some of the most severe gun laws,
right, with a kid with
restrictive gun laws,
Asperger's.
and unlocked in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I don't know how that happens.
But again, we're not dealing with the root of we're not dealing with
right,
the root.
we're not dealing with the problem.
Right.
I mean,
Every time one of these things happens, every single time, the first thing people say is, when somebody gets into a drunk driving accident, the first thing people say is, oh, what are we going to do about drunk driving? Which is a logical next step. They don't say, how are we going to shut down the car companies?
Yeah, but it's kind of similar though. Parents are supposed to lock their liquor cabinets. And how many do? Should you?
And be responsible.
People should be locking up their medication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people don't do that.
I mean, what do you think, though? I mean, this week alone, there was this, a kid that was threatening to shoot people at another school at Taft.
Yeah.
And then they go to his house, and there's a guy in Facebook that was saying right after the shootings he was going to do it, and they went to his house and they found all these guns. He was a young kid.
Right.
Do you think that's mental underlying
the copycat kind of kill? I think all of this stuff is. I mean, look, you have to be mentally ill to go in and shoot people.
Yeah.
Anyone that's in their right mind is not going to go around shooting people.
And listen, we all think it. Let's be honest. But what separates us is that mental illness.
Well, I never thought about shooting a bunch of kids.
No, you know what I meant.
When I'm at the
Yes.
post, I was at the post office and I waited for 35 minutes the other day. And I was there for 35 minutes and I went, I understand why people go postal. I understand that thing. Not saying, I'm justifying
the going
it.
postal term really came from people that were shooting people in post offices.
Right.
And those were Vietnam vets largely that were coming back and who were proficient at using arms. But what it was really about, the studies are showing, is that people were responding to authoritative figures misusing the power on people that felt powerless.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these people actually feel very justified in what they're doing because they feel for some reason they've been put down or that they don't have a place in the world and they have to make a statement. They think they're helping people.
Yeah. Let me reiterate. I'm not justifying it,
Right.
but I understand why, people were getting so antsy around, and I was getting antsy after them.
But the point, what we're saying is what separates, and there's no different one addiction. I was talking to somebody tonight. We barbecue every Sunday night at the center. It's pretty awesome. And one of the things I always say to people is the difference between when addicts are using, they're essentially animals. Right? There's no, they'll touch everything. There's no filter. Yeah. But part of being human, part of getting sober is you get this filter. You become human again. One of the human emotions is being able to separate fantasy and reality.
Right.
People that have mental illness can't do that.
Well, especially if they have drug-induced
Right.
delusions, or they're paranoid from smoking pot even.
Right.
I mean, and then there's stronger drugs like PCP and other things that will
Acid.
But also, a lot of those drugs will bring on mental illness. They'll bring on psychosis. So it can bring on early onset of schizophrenia. So there's a lot of things there that are happening. But what really makes me angry about the whole thing is that everybody's going around talking, and I think there is a problem with guns. There's clearly a problem with guns. There's a problem with the registration. There's a problem with screening. There's a problem with how they're handled. You have to take a test to get a driver's license, but you actually have to take a test to get a handgun in California. But it's like,
I've been to the store with
very-
you.
it's very
Okay,
easy.
it didn't.
But there's certainly no training involved. And other than how to make sure how to clear a chamber. That's, I think, the one test they give you, which is terrible. But what the real crux of it is that when Kennedy they had deinstitutionalization, which meant that in the 60s, because psychiatric medications were getting better, they emptied all the state mental health hospitals. And part of that was that the federal government said that, we're going to pass this Community Mental Health Centers Act that's going to provide for the care of the mentally ill in the communities. It's going to give them showers, places to sleep, access to medication, access to therapists. And it got largely gutted after Kennedy's assassination, when LBJ got just overwhelmed by Vietnam. And so the state abandoned mental health, pushed the burden on the federal government through Social Security, SSI. So people are all on disability that are mentally ill through federal government funding, but they don't really get any direct care, or very little. And so we've abandoned mental health.
Well,
and
that's
we've
exactly
abandoned
it.
substance abuse.
But because here's a major thing, right? We have amazing organizations in this country like MAD. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers.
Right.
The second, these women have done amazing work. With the second things happen, they're like, how are we going to deal with this issue?
Right. That's a criminal justice approach, which is obviously always going to be part of substance abuse and how we deal with it. But, there's prevention, and, such a small percentage of the budget of care goes into prevention.
Social workers in schools, just...
Yeah, people think prevention is like just education, like just say no, but there's all sorts of preventative measures that are much more effective.
I wish it was that easy to just say no.
Yeah, and that's just not.
She tried.
Yeah.
But if you just tuned in,
On
what's
many levels.
amazing though about that message, with Nancy Reagan's message, is that 26 years later we still remember it.
Because it was so silly.
Right, but how many other? It was on like lemon. Remember the lemon heads, those little candy boxes? No matter where you were, you would see you would open up the flap of lemon heads and you'd see just say no. I'm like, to what? Lemon heads? But
this is also the thing we were talking about earlier, that everybody in America wants like a one-line solution or answer to everything. Just say no is going to solve the drug problem.
Right,
in
just
America.
ban it from Mayor Bloomberg. Just ban sugar, ban sodas. Ban, ban all these things.
Insanity.
But we're not dealing with
And
the real...
42nd Street.
Right.
What do you
But
do
again,
with all that?
But again, it's like we're not dealing with the real issues. And every time one of these things come out, I wish somebody would right away say, what are we doing about mental illness? And that's wherein lies. One day when that finally happens, we'll be dealing with the issues.
Yeah, when Newton happened, it happened for a good week. Everyone's like, mental illness, let's help it. And then it's kind of gone downhill.
Nobody knows. First of all, most people don't even know where to begin. And second of all, there's just so much need to treat the mentally ill that the cost is extremely expensive.
And a lot of insurances
right now don't cover it. The Parity Act is coming in, which is going to require people that have 50 employers or more, employers, to actually provide, if they provide health care insurance, to also provide some mental health coverage. But that will probably still be fairly minimal.
Okay. By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. Give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with Andrew, Easy on the Eyes, Spanswick, and Jennifer, Easy on the Eyes, Gimenez. And just because you commented on that, I'm just going to call you that from now on.
Fantastic,
and, that I have no new lines. And
Judah Hart on the Eyes.
Judah Hart on the Eyes, Friedman. Just so you know, one of your friends on Facebook, or, I don't want to say your friends, you have this, about 2 years ago, we took a picture together at a party or something, Jen, and some guy goes, you wrote the handsome Judah, and some guy writes, if he's handsome, if that turtle's handsome, handsome, then I'm like the luckiest guy in the world. I know. I was a little offended.
That's
Somebody,
pretty- that's pretty horrible.
You
somebody
remember?
called me a turtle, and it's okay. I guess
They call me a lot of things.
Yeah, I
Don't
know
worry about it.
if that's what it's come down to. But so we're a show about addiction and recovery and the success story. So give us a call tonight with success stories or struggling stories. It's 888-539-2980. 888-539-2980. We understand that we're against the Golden Globes tonight, and we're in Hollywood. A lot of people in America like watching the Golden Globes.
Oh, I know. I watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't ruin it for me. No, I'm just joking. I'm not saying it. And
They
yeah.
got awards. They got trophies.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of trophies
A lot
and a lot
of gowns,
speeches were
yeah.
given out. Yeah.
Jodie Foster brought down the house, though. She was pretty amazing. Like, she was very vocal about her personal life and who she is as a woman and what that represents. And there was kind of like a misguided of like, you're kind of confused. I left the house confused if she's done acting or gonna just direct, because she said she wasn't gonna be on the stage again.
I guess that's a loss or a gain for all of us.
No.
No, Ivan, but anyways, give us a call. We're in the studio tonight. Jennifer's been here. Andrew's in here. And there's something else I wanted to talk about. We spoke about right away in the beginning of the show. We all, oddly enough, bumped into each other in the movie theater Saturday night or Friday, no, whatever night. And Friday night.
So
And you had brought up.
Yeah, we're all sober. We don't even know what the weekend
That's how good sobriety is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We can't remember the night. And but it's true. A lot of people's biggest fear of when they get sober we were talking about this the other night. People are scared to give up cigarettes because they're scared to gain weight. People are scared to get sober because they're scared because alcohol and drugs can be a...
Well, all of these things are self-medicating.
Right.
Like people that smoke cigarettes because they don't want to gain weight, I mean, they're doing it for vanity. So they're medicating to
Yet
lose
they're
weight
aging.
for vanity. Yeah, at the same point, right. They don't realize that there's longer-term effects.
I'll take less weight, okay?
The one smoker in
yeah,
the room.
and I'll take... No, Jen smokes. And I'm outing her, okay? You don't get to do that.
I didn't say I didn't or did.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it's
Jen
bad for your
hasn't
skin.
quit yet. We haven't used
Hey,
Josie's...
When are we going to do that, though? I got these vaporizer cigarettes.
Yeah, you just need to quit.
Yeah.
So when are we going to do it?
That's a great
No,
question.
seriously, because now we have Andrew, and you can't lie to Andrew because he said
Well,
we're
I can
going
lie to Andrew. I mean, but I
in
won't.
October we're going to
Yeah.
stop, and I said I'd do it. Let's do the buddy system.
Why is it so hard to quit smoking?
Because you're addicted.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And
Let's do it.
yeah,
Let's-
one
I
of
know
these days. Yeah.
Josie every week says to me,
Yeah.
"Are you ready?" And I'm ready. I'm ready.
Josie,
Josie's one of
the therapists at KLEAN,
She
and
does hypnotherapy.
she does hypnotherapy.
She's gonna take us
and,
down.
Honestly, I think you should just quit. I mean, if you look at the people that quit, normally it takes like a big health crisis and then they quit. That's
Right.
what I just went through. I just had this problem with my kidneys and it was freaking me out. And they told me to stop drinking Diet Coke. And anybody that knows me well knows that I used to drink like 9 to 12 Diet Cokes a day and like no water. And I haven't
by the way,
had
there
a
are
Diet Coke in 12 days.
That's
there are
amazing.
Diet
Yeah.
Coke fans out there that are saying to themselves, 12 or 9 or 12? That's nothing.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had the worst headache for
Yeah.
like 2 weeks. I mean,
But
it was
that's
unbelievable.
a big fear people have of it's an amazing thing, right, with addiction.
But I never would have done it if it wasn't for my kidneys. Like my kidneys were starting not to work, and I was like, they're like, you can't drink Diet Coke, and I'm like, oh damn.
Well, sometimes your body has to. Sometimes your body, does tell you stuff that.
Right.
I'm not liking smoking anymore. Like it's not.
Right, you're not getting the same benefits.
No, and I mean, make a date. Let's do it.
I was getting the same benefits from Diet Coke, though. I got to tell you.
You were.
Well,
it was my last big vice,
Well, Diet Coke is a little. I know it's a little different than smoking cigarettes or
I don't know. I think it's pretty addictive. I'd have dreams in the middle of the night and have to get
Oh.
up and drink one.
Really?
Yeah. So that's kind of like a cigarette.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
I don't even want to know about your Diet Coke dreams, but you could speak to Dr. Co about that.
I would have dreams of like breaking into like pizza restaurants and getting like getting into the fountain and like pouring a Diet Coke into the
this is when you were coming off it?
Yeah.
Oh, so you were having Diet Coke.
I was literally having like
that's
dreams
amazing
about,
because that's very similar to, you're right, when you're getting off of alcohol and drugs, you have those.
It was just like getting off alcohol.
And then did you wake up sweating, wondering if you actually had it?
And
Wow.
not disoriented, and it was a big deal. I didn't think it would be such a big deal, and the headaches were unbelievable.
So again, this is why most people, what you're talking about right now is, and the people out there that are listening, is that most people are scared to death of stopping because of these things.
Right.
Because of these, they're scared of.
People have a natural inclination to move away from pain. If you take an amoeba, like a one-celled little creature, and you put an acid solution on one side and an alkaline solution on the other side, it will move into where it's neutral. It will always move away from wherever it feels the most pain. So human beings are very much like one-celled creatures. We try to go to where there's less pain. We complicate that by the fact that we're like these incredibly intelligent beings. And so, what we think are pleasure and pain centers of where we're trying to find the safe zone for, there's so many of them. And we have to make so many decisions day in and day out about where the safe zone is. And then we cross lines all the time. And then when we habituate ourselves through addiction or habit into always being in a very painful or very damaging situation and not knowing where the soft, comfortable, healthy place is anymore, then we're lost. And I think we're seeing that, more and more in our society, where we're getting easier and easier access to temporary quick fixes, especially through pharmaceutical drugs. There's a discussion Judah and I were having earlier about, what is pain? You can have physical pain. Like you can have pain from you have a broken leg and it hurts like hell, and maybe you might need a painkiller
or hernia surgery,
or a hernia surgery where you might need Vicodin while your peritoneal layer heals and you're in a lot of pain. But there's also emotional pain. And a lot of people confuse the two. They think that, I can take that same opiate that I was taking for my back pain, but it also numbs my emotional pain. And then they start taking it for that reason, not their back anymore. And that's when it really becomes addictive, because the back pain either dissipates or becomes manageable. But trying to constantly feed that habit of squashing that emotional pain. And if you look at opiate addicts, and I've treated quite a few, they all share one thing in common, and that is that they tend to not want to feel. They want to avoid things.
But don't you think that's the
things.
common theme among alcoholics and addicts?
I think that certainly people that are taking speed or meth or holding on their class. I mean, those are people that want to be up. They want to be doing crazy things, and
Well, now what's the difference between meth and methamphetamine?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's the same drug.
Okay.
And crystal.
Crystal, rather. Crystal
They're
and
all
meth.
the same.
It's basically the same compound. There's different purities and there's different ways to make.
Or as they
That's what
call
I
it,
meant.
hillbilly heroin.
There's all sorts of different forms. I mean, it's like cocaine. You get cocaine on the street. I guarantee you, if you took 5 samples from different dealers, what you actually get is not going to be the same. I mean, it's all stepped on, and they're all stepped on with different things. Benzocaine.
Rat poison, horse tranquilizer.
Well, there's not even rat poison. I mean, most drug dealers want their clients to come back, so but they put fillers.
Unless you're my
in.
drug expert.
There was just a big case in Britain where they did an intercept, and they got 2.5 tons of, it was benzocaine and one other substance, and it's what they cut cocaine with in Britain, and they actually put them in prison, even though both substances are legal, but it was like a 2-ton shipment of cut for cocaine.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
And by the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio, not the shipping hour of cocaine. But I think all these things are so important to talk about. Give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. One of the things we're talking about right now that I think is very interesting is the difference between the two types of pain. One is the physical pain, right? You break your leg, you're in pain. You had a hernia surgery, you're in pain. The other is the emotional pain. So a lot of times what you're saying is that people, like I did, right? I had hernia pain, but that's when I stopped taking the stuff I needed to take. I didn't continue to take it to treat the emotional pain, which is a lot.
Well, also, if you have an injury, you tend to have depression, or it's often that you can't work, you can't hang out with your friends, so you're taking this pain medication to try and get better, but then you also become depressed because you start losing touch with your friends, you can't do anything, you feel like you're disabled or debilitated, and so then you start treating the depression with the opiate that you were prescribed to treat the back pain or whatever pain, and now you're treating emotional pain. So instead of taking it as prescribed and then moving quickly, if you're still depressed after that, onto doing some alternative therapy, like just even getting up and walking is a big step. But or if you needed an antidepressant.
Now, I get a lot of clients say, oh, how am I going to deal with my pain? I have to be on this pain medication. There's also non-narcotics at work, correct? Or other medications that could help
there's
them.
some, but there's not. For real chronic pain, it's a problem. We don't really have that many medications that can help with real severe pain. I mean, there's things like Celebrex, which there used to be Vioxx, which got taken off the market because it was causing heart attacks in the elderly. But but it's an anti-inflammatory. So it only treats things like arthritis.
And I got to tell you,
joint
some of that
pain.
stuff is, when I've had you've seen me in my severe back pain,
Yeah.
and I've tried that stuff first. I always try the Flexerol
Flexerol even is actually mood altering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I've tried, different things, and doctor prescribed, of course, and
Right.
It just doesn't work great, But again,
Right, but you probably burned out a few receptors.
that's probably. Do you think that's possible? I mean, let's talk. I mean, I want to talk about that before we go to break. Do you think we've abused some of us, alcohol, drugs so much is that later on in life, some drugs or alcohol some drugs don't work for us?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think your body. Well, there's two things to that. One is that yes, anything you do, even in moderation, is going to have an effect on your body. So, and you can see that like people that exercise. Exercise is good, but people that exercise tend to have joint pain when they get older, and they have problems with their back, and that over-exercise. So anything you do is going to have some sort of long-lasting effect. If you change the chemistry of your brain, it doesn't just go away. I mean, you drink, you kill brain cells. You drink, one glass of wine, you're killing some brain cells.
So I killed many brain cells.
But more importantly,
So
you're upsetting developmental, development. The scariest thing is younger people that are using these substances, especially marijuana, which has a huge effect on the development of the frontal lobe. And Dr. Koh, I think, has been in here talking about that before. But, it's a very dangerous drug for people that are, have a brain that hasn't fully developed. We know now that the brain doesn't fully develop.
I don't think parents realize what you're talking about enough. I really, we're talking about crises crisis in our country, and I don't think parents out there realize how damaging, because they did the bad weed in the 60s, realize how dangerous the weed is in the in the 2000s.
Well, parents are even from the 80s now, and even
Right.
marijuana in the 80s is nothing like it is
Right.
now.
40% worse, and they don't realize the addictive effect of it, and they don't realize the dangers in it. So they're almost like being like, because I did it, I can't tell my kids not to do it. Parents out there, it's okay to tell your kids not to do drugs. It's part of the parent agreement.
Yeah, well, I think we want some sort of. There needs to be a way to explain how to do exploration of these issues without actually entering into the danger zones with them.
I actually want to talk about that when we get back, because I think it's a really important topic. You're listening to Clean Radio. The discussion continues at cleanradio.com.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? KLEAN Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to KLEAN Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. Addiction happens. Recovery and a new life starts here.
Welcome back to Clean Radio, the show that cares with a K.
Are we back to using the killers? Like
Yeah,
that goes back to our days out of broadcasting on air.
I missed it. I missed like doing the Judah dance.
I like the Afro
and
Man.
I missed that stuff. I miss, it was like
he's doing retro Clean Radio.
yeah, retro.
I go away for a few weeks.
Old, going OG original. We're going OJ original Jew back in Anaheim.
no.
Yo. Okay, welcome back everybody out there listening to Clean Radio. We're a show about addiction, recovery, give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with Andrew Easy on the Eyes. Andrew Easy on the Eyes Spanswick and Jennifer Easy on the Eyes Gimenez. Who you don't have to. I love that Jennifer like raises her hand.
I know. I'm like,
when she wants to say something.
I don't want to cross-talk. Well, even though I do.
Yeah.
We were just talking at break, like that whole thing about like feeling paranoid and marijuana. I think marijuana lately, I'm just gonna out myself here because I don't mind because I tell myself, is that like a glass of white wine, which I'd never liked wine, sounded good for a while, and marijuana. Like I was like, I wish I could be that person that could smoke pot and laugh. I'm none of the above. Like I'm paranoid. I see shadows if I smoke pot. Wine was boring to me, but like that, I don't know if anyone else out there listening or if you guys ever experienced, like when I did cocaine, I knew I was high and I had to like that paranoia of trying to come down, like be normal and force the normal, or like force normal when you were stoned. Like how, like
what's the question?
How, I know there's other people that feel this. There has to be, because like you were mentioning that, you could understand what I was saying on that. Like, how do you like cope and realize that it is a problem if you're feeling these things, right?
Well, I mean, the strange thing is this idea, and this goes along with theories with addiction, where you go from abuse to addiction, or even during the period that you're just abusing a drug but not addicted to it, is you start having negative consequences. So the first few times you do it, or maybe the first time it's bad, but maybe you could try it again. And the more you do it, more you get deeper and deeper problems. And, the analogy I like to use is the opening the door thing. Every time you use is like opening a door. And when the first few times you open the door, you enter into this nice, pretty little, sitting yard, and it's a great time. You feel good, or whatever the problems are that you feel go away. But eventually you start opening the door and you get hit on the head with a hammer. And then, like, you close the door and you're like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. Mm-hmm. And then, like, you might try it again. You open up and everything's great. And you think, oh, this works again. And you shut the door. And then you open the door and you get hit on the head with a hammer. Eventually, you get to the point where every time you open the door, you're getting hit on the head with a hammer. And you don't know why you still want to open the door.
That's addiction.
Right, that's addiction.
That really does sum up addiction very well. But, it's very true what you're saying. The first time I smoked pot, I was 16 years old. I did it in Woodstock. And Woodstock 24, right before the big 25. And the first time I ever smoked pot was this. I don't want to say his name. His name was Richie. And,
I don't want to say his name, but
I don't want to say his last name. But I remember we're smoking pot, and we'll get to the calls after this. But we're smoking pot, and he starts, and I don't feel. It's that first time everybody's smoking. Nobody feels, and he goes, I had a good childhood, and this, nothing ever starts well when you start with this. So Richie starts saying this, and he goes, and I go, that's great. And he goes, it was amazing. I used to take tennis lessons. My parents made me take tennis lessons. And he goes, I love tennis. Then he goes, I hated tennis. And then he did this with piano, and I remember this was my first pot experience going, I don't get this. Like, I'm looking at him getting all depressed. And so my first experience with pot was horrific. So I never really chased it again. Right. With alcohol, it was very different. I loved my first. And I think that's whatever you find your drug, whether it's food, anything, you chase that high. You chase that.
Well, there's something called object relations theory. And so, that talks about that people become fixated on certain objects. And that has to do largely with your mother and whatever. It comes out of the idea of that when you're born, you don't realize that you're separate from your mother, and then you form separate object relations, and you actually become attached to different things.
Always got to bring it back to Freud, don't you?
Well, it's not just Freud. I mean, object relations is well beyond Freud. But, the point is that, you attach things to things for the wrong reason often. So people will drink because they think that, the person that they want to go on a date with likes to drink. And so they'll drink a certain kind of drink. That's what advertising is.
Right.
Advertising is
or it'll give them the courage to do it in the first place.
It will give you the reward that you think it will give you. And you forget the reason that you started. Like the reason that people started drinking is not the reason they're drinking once they're an alcoholic.
Well, I mean, that's the amazing thing. What you're saying is it's one of the reasons I love talking is, obviously we're more than just
friends.
We are. It's good to know.
Is because you've been in the industry so long. You've been in the industry of helping people for so long, and you've thought about a lot of these things. And I forgot the train of thought since you guys interrupted me. But no, one of the things is only alcoholics and addicts have this crazy belief, right? Before you ever got high, alcoholics and drug addicts never thought life was fun.
Right.
All of a sudden, you get high, you think every day should be great, right? Then you get sober, and you think every day should be great because I'm sober, forgetting that before you ever picked up a drink or drug, you were miserable.
Yeah, and life is never perfect, and part of enjoying life is also enjoying that it has its ups and downs. I mean, if you didn't have downs, you wouldn't know what ups were. So, it's that's a big part of it, is having like a good perspective on what life entails.
I saw to hold back from saying something just now.
What?
But
We're backing up on calls. Let's take a call. Let's take James from Huntington Beach. James, welcome to Clean Radio.
Hi, James.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you, James?
I'm doing well.
So you got a question, or what's going on?
Well, it wasn't so much a question as just kind of a frustration with the way our society dysfunctions and the treatment of mental health and codependency. And I was coming down the freeway and I heard your station, and I just left a mental health hospital visiting someone, and so it really struck home. But what I'm seeing is that all too often it seems as though our community is focused on not really providing health, and we hear about all the people that suffer from mental health and then go out and shoot somebody and that type of thing. And we could have a whole conversation on that, but that's not where I'm going. What I really would like to bring up is the fact that there are all these different various treatment programs in our society for people who are suffering from mental health and codependency, and a lot of times they're only providing one or the other and not both.
Right.
And what's also frustrating is that if they're really needing a lot of structure because of their mental health issues, the board and care, which for the community doesn't understand the difference between board and care and other facilities, is the fact that they provide the housing, the food, they serve you your meal and your medications. But if you're out here in Orange County, if you're also suffering from drug addiction, then they don't want you in there for fear that you're going to reinfect the other people who are in there. And so a lot of times people just don't fit into programs, whether it's MHA or whether it's telecare programs that are addressing mental health needs.
Well, I think, James,
really
I think
missing
you're
in our
absolutely
society.
right. And what you're talking about is the different modalities of care. So there's different types of care for different types of problems. And there's never been an organizing structure from any one central authority as to how to provide the needs for all those that are sick and all the different ways that they are sick. It used to be a little bit more cohesive in that there was, actual mental hospitals, which mostly were filled with alcoholics and drug addicts.
Sanitariums.
Sanitariums. And, there's some of them that are left over and now have become acute care mental health hospitals, and the average length of stay for those are very short. It's normally like 8 to 14 days, depending on your illness. That's a big difference from even not that long ago. In the late 80s, the average length of stay in an acute care hospital was about 90 days. And then if you go back into the 60s, the average length of stay was several months, 6 months. So, we've now decided that because of psychopharmacology that we can just medicate people and then throw them back out. Right.
Yeah, outpatient.
The people don't really even have outpatient.
Yeah.
And part of the problem, the biggest problem with mental health issues is medication compliance. People feel better when they take their medication and they stop taking it. And they don't realize they're getting sick again. And so...
in talking to protection and advocacy, a lot of times we'll hospitalize somebody and they don't like the side effects that they're having to deal with
most of the time
on the medication. So when they're released, they either diminish the prescription or they take street drugs, and of course that blocks out the psychotropics. But I know I'm talking to the choir here on this.
No,
it's important information for people to know. I mean, I think people don't understand why people would do that. You think you send someone to the hospital, they put them on medication.
They're feeling good.
They seem better to the people around them, and they can't understand why they would want to stop taking the medication because they feel like they're missing something.
Right.
And the disease that's most commonly associated with is bipolar illness, where people have mania. And people like that manic up, energetic sort of feeling,
Yep.
even though it's irrational and can lead to paranoia and delusions.
I heard this from somebody the other day that you wouldn't see as bad, right? Quote, they don't look, and they called me on the phone, and they take something called Lexapro,
Right.
which is a very
It's an
common
antidepressant.
But one of the side effects is sometimes it could cause sexual.
Right, sexual side effects like sexual dysfunction.
Right. So I said to them, listen, first of all, don't get off it because the coming off of it right away is very dangerous. But their biggest worry was the sexual dysfunction that they were having, the sexual component. Now they're willing to be depressed or risk their life. For the, I was like, try to find something else. Go get a second opinion.
I completely understand that, though. I mean, the goal is to be normal. Everybody wants to feel as good as they possibly can, and sex is probably one of the most important.
That's why you should take an
people's
antidepressant
lives.
so you can have it.
Right, so that you can get out there and meet somebody.
But James, but what James is like, I think it's important. And James,
but there are other antidepressants.
There's
that
tons,
don't have
and that's
those
what I was
effects.
saying to them. I was saying, listen, I tried Wellbutrin, had major anxiety attacks when I was on it.
Different ones.
So,
we don't know why they work
Right.
differently with different people.
And
but
that's
they
what I
do,
love
so.
about Dr. KLEAN is when you ask him these questions of why it works, why it doesn't work. He always says, I don't know.
Well, the neat thing is they're now coming up with tests that you can give people that check to see genetically which antidepressant will probably work best for the person. But these tests and these advancements are expensive, and they haven't made it into the mainstream yet.
James, if you don't mind me asking, and I know it's a set. By the way, if you just tuned in and you're listening to Clean Radio, we're on the phone with James. You're just coming back from the mental institution, the mental hospital.
He was visiting someone.
Visiting somebody. What are they there for?
Well, it's been a series of 5150s, and now we have a long-term prescribed for this individual.
And to people out there that are listening, a 5150 is when you have basically
72-hour hold.
Or no, you're right. You're able to basically sign them over.
I think that the real message that I wanted to leave on the air tonight is my frustration with the rates of recidivism. And, there was a Dr. Rappaport who is no longer alive, but he used to be in charge of the Orange County Mental Health Board. And I went down there one time and just chewed him alive in a public meeting, and he met me after the meeting and said, you're absolutely right. And he said, if the county would spend more money on people with a MS degree and type of thing that could provide counseling and keep kids from going over the edge and becoming fully pulled into drugs or pulled into the mental health things because of the drugs and those types of things, the money that it would cost could save X number of people from going over the edge, and yet they say we don't have the money.
Yeah, we don't think like that in America.
They don't treat the people then that need to be treated, or they do get treatment, and like you say, they get their prescription, they give them some time, and they're out the door, and it's a merry-go-round out there, and it's just a horrific cost when they come to the attention of law enforcement and the court systems, and there are attorneys that are involved because they don't have the money for one themselves.
James,
it's
in
jail. It's
the problem, James, is that it's really a horrific cost all the way around. I mean, whether you do it early or you do it late, whether it's criminal justice that eventually takes over, or an acute care hospital
system in the beginning,
or if it's therapeutic interventions and prevention programs in the beginning, there's a huge social cost for both mental illness and addiction in this country, and nobody really wants to face up to it except for like quick fixes or jargony kind of language.
But James, I got good news for you though. There are some places out there that are doing this at Clean.
Well,
we're one of the. And I'm not saying this like to sound like an infomercials. It's one of the reasons I'm with Andrew, not in that way, that that we're friends and that we work together, is that because Clean is one of the few places that when they say dual diagnosis, we actually mean we're dual diagnosis. And
which means that we actually work with mental health and addiction.
And the thing is, we don't care what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Yep. You got both. So, and I don't mean we don't care. It's not. What's important is that we deal with both.
That's why I'm here too.
You actually have to have an addiction as a presenting issue to come to us. But if you have an underlying psychiatric issue, those are the clients we specialize in.
So, James, we got to run. But thank you very much for the call.
I do want to say.
And great points, James.
Yeah,
Thank you.
James,
Yes,
great
very,
points.
very amazing. I do want to say, though, another thing I think maybe it might be for guys more about the sexual, not being able to get, sexually, whatever, aroused or whatever that is on like support. For women, they're gaining weight. And people on bipolar, I've noticed that that have bipolar, they also get off on getting off the medication. Like it makes them get
manic.
high. Yeah, it makes them high, feel high.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem with this stuff is that we get it. The three of us in here get it, but to their families out there, like you said, they don't know what's going on because they see.
Right. The other thing is that people become attached to their illness. That's another thing that happens. People actually, they get a lot of, they believe a lot of who they are personally is really themselves sick, and they don't know how to be normal. And back when I was just out of graduate school, I was working at a psychiatric hospital, and one of the newer age antipsychotic drugs came out, and they gave it to a lot of late stage schizophrenics. And almost a quarter of them committed suicide after actually becoming better on the medication, because they realized that for 20-something years they had been really, really ill, and they had missed out on their life, and they didn't really realize how sick they had actually been. So, this shows that, one, that even with psychopharmacology getting better, with medications being able to treat things, you still need to follow through and help people. And these are damaging diseases: alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness. The period of people during the time that they're in that illness, there's a lot of developmental delays, there's a lot of emotional trauma, there's a lot of loss of things in their lives, there's anger and resentment from their families, there's grief within themselves.
That's a
there's
great
sense of
point.
shame.
I'm fascinated.
It is. It
You
actually
hit
really is a great point, because it's essentially, and I always say this, it's like getting sober. We've all seen the movie Big, right? And I think I've said this before, where all he wants to do is be an adult. Right? And in the end of the movie, I don't mean to ruin it for people, but he gets to be a kid again after he went to the machine, right? But when you get sober, you wake up as an adult. When you get healed with antidepressants, you wake up however old you are, and it's almost like you're playing catch-up. And that's terrifying to alcoholics and addicts, to everybody. It's terrifying.
Well, a disease like depression is very consuming. I mean, you spend all your time trying to figure out why you feel depressed or dealing with the side effects of being depressed, and all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. What do you do with yourself? It's the same thing with drinking, right? Like
you just nailed it, though. Like you said it so perfectly. I mean, I think I needed to hear that more than I really needed to hear that. You redefine. I was told I lost that identity. I was mourning and grieving that drug addict role that I was playing, and I'm turning 7 on Tuesday.
And it's highly romanticized as well.
It is. And I'm turning 7 on Tuesday. The first 3-4 years, 7 years sober. And
which is great.
The first 3-4 years, I was redefining. 5, I'm redefining, and no longer do I carry that role as a drug addict girl. I've been able to mourn it.
I think at the beginning it's very important. It's very important that your identity is that you're sober,
but it's so much
well, the sober
bigger
part I think
now.
is important. I think the part that's dangerous is the worst story, like glamorizing and romanticizing your addiction
there's
to
nothing
prove,
glamorous
like
about
to
mine.
you go to some meetings and people
you hear
will,
junkie pride and war stories,
and all that stuff, and and from a lot of people that are claimed to be in recovery, like I've heard criticism where they say to people that don't want to have like some super war story about their addiction. They just want to talk about being sober and getting better, and it's not about some trying to impress everybody and make everybody laugh or whatever. It's just about trying to be healthy and get better. But people, they want to be entertained more than they want to be healthy half the time.
But I guess it's like that everywhere, though. Any type of mental institution type of thing, setting, people are always trying to like trump each other's stories or high school.
Well, when you have 4 Jesuses in your group, it's hard to...
Well, no, then somebody's got 10. And if you just tuned in,
10.
you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. Give us a call at 888-539-2980, 888-539-2980. But also go to Facebook/KLEAN Radio and watch all our old shows at KLEANradio.com. We have some amazing shows. And I love that Jen was telling me before that she was driving here and she heard the show on from last week.
Yeah, I was driving it. I got a little starstruck. I'm like, wait a minute, that's Judah. I know.
Yeah. That accidentally happened to me. I was telling this story a couple weeks ago. I was driving on Sunday. They were playing one of our best of shows on Saturday, and I hear this addiction and recovery show, and I go, oh, somebody stole my idea. And then I hear Danny Trejo on. I go, somebody stole my guest. And then I hear my voice, and I go, oh, that's me. And I was like, cool.
That's what happens with your memory when you drink too much.
It's just like, it's just like, because I have a hard time. I hate listening to myself. I love listening to myself, but I hate listening to myself back on the radio. But if you just tuned in, we have an amazing show tonight. And this is one of the things I love, Andrew, when you're back in the studio. I could ask you questions and questions that, you're a professional. You've been doing this for a long time, and you've seen it all.
Yeah.
And it's sort of cool that
you've never seen it all. Everybody's different. So
I know you haven't seen. You've seen a lot. Yeah. But you've also experienced two things with this. Sort of like what James was talking about. Because of your previous career being in mental health, you got to experience that. Because now you're working with alcoholism and addiction, which is another form of mental health. You've got to experience that, and you've almost essentially got to you're trying to figure out how to put them two together.
Well, I think they've always been put together, but there's never been a cohesive what they call a modality of care or treatment methodology for dealing with it. The other thing is that like cancer, there's not just one type of cancer. Even like with breast cancer now, they're finding that there's multiple different kinds of breast cancer. It's not just one type of breast cancer. So, there's some that are easy to treat, and then there's some that will guarantee almost kill you. Same thing with skin cancer. Some are, easy to treat, others aren't. We see that with mental health, and we see that with addiction. There's different levels of addiction. People have predispositions or maybe behavioral or developmental issues that make them much worse addicts than other people, and they're much harder to treat. So, it's always a struggle, and they've always been side by side. When I worked solely in mental health, I used to have 9 psychiatric hospitals in the Gulf South before I moved to California, and I was always struck by the fact that we didn't really think much about substance abuse. We had a substance abuse group once a week for our clients that were mostly in there for acute care issues like schizophrenia, bipolar illness, major depression, suicide attempts, stuff like that. Those are the clients that I was working with primarily. One day a week they'd do a substance abuse class, and I never really considered it that important because I was so concerned about them getting stable off this major psychiatric issue. My understanding now, 20 years later, of really working with substance abuse is how integrally involved the whole thing is. And I think part of what I was discussing earlier is that this is a long-term process with a lot of issues that are both external, social, involvement with the community, with your family, with your work, with your job. But there's also all this internal stuff about emotions and feelings and shame and guilt and identity and, where you are developmentally as a person and work and what are you going to do with your life. And, so it's just it's a big challenge to take on. And, you can't go to a town hall meeting and explain to a couple politicians that this is a simple thing to fix, and it's not just say no. It's not just let's ban guns. It's not just people should be more responsible and take care of their mental health. It's a whole societal problem it amazes me. You walk along the street and people don't think anymore about walking past someone who's clearly mentally ill, lying on the sidewalk face down. It's just,
but I think because people have given up. I think people have given up to thinking that there's...
I think that government has no...
There's no right. So what are they going to...
They call the police, they come pick them up, and then they're back there 2 days later. There's no real commitment in our society. Nobody's outraged by this stuff.
I know there are a lot of people out there right now that are struggling. There are a lot of people, going through financial times, whether it's with their alcohol. And this isn't an easy subject to talk about. So whether you want to give us a call here at 888-539-2980 or you want to give us a call at the center, it's absolutely free. What's the number? And 888-601-6040. It's 888-601-6040. Give us a call, and I promise it's anonymous. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know that this is hard. This is hard for people that the hardest thing an alcoholic could ever do is use the telephone. It's almost like addicts and alcoholics are predisposed to not getting on a phone and saying, I need help.
Yeah.
Now, to the people and their families, they're predisposed to only trying to help the alcoholic and not getting help for themselves. And it's this cunning and baffling, insidious, vicious cycle and so if you're out there right now and you're scared and just give us a call.
The one thing that I'd like to say, though, is that, getting back to this issue of us sort of ignoring it, is that, we have made some incredible leaps forward in the treatment of mental illness and addiction. And it's no longer acceptable that we just leave people lying on the sidewalk.
I agree.
I think it's time for people to get angry about this stuff. And the fact that, you call the police and they send a pet team or they send a care team and they take them in for a day, clean them up, and then you see them back there a week later. It's like people should be more upset about that.
Well, I have a huge problem with the ACLU, and we're not a political show, but one of the things I agree with you, there are certain people that clearly should be off the streets.
They should be in
locked
a mental
up,
hospital for
mental health. And
people.
sadly, we have legal organizations that fight for us not to be able to do that. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's like you go to 7-Eleven, you go in front of Ralph's.
But that's just bad law,
Yeah.
and that's bad public policy, and all those things could be changed if there was a social will to do so.
I couldn't agree with. I agree.
Right? I mean, we lock people up for possession of.
I think people have given up,
and it's like,
I think what we're
but,
saying to people out there right now tonight: don't give up.
But where do you send them? That'll be the first thing.
Well, the problem is actually it's a very complex problem. Yeah. That's part of the problem is it's complex, and it's about who's going to pay. And it's between the fact that the states under the Constitution are responsible for the care of the mentally ill and indigent in their state. The federal government is not. And so it's states' rights versus federal rights. Federal government doesn't want to pay for it either. So, you got everybody pointing fingers, blaming everybody, and nobody's taking responsibility. So
no, but what they're doing is trying to ban soda in New York City.
Yeah, right.
And because that's really the important issue. Because that's essentially what they're doing, and I think people sometimes don't understand is that every time people are trying to ban something, they're taking away from the real issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not for burning the flag, but when you run a whole campaign on not burning the flag, really that's the most important
exactly,
thing.
Or going after steroids in baseball. If people want to use steroids in baseball, knock yourself out. Get as pumped up. I don't care if you look like a robot out there, but never should the government be getting involved. And
well, baseball should be getting involved.
Baseball should be getting involved
and the people that regulate those drugs.
That's exactly
which
right.
Is the DEA, which is the government.
God, it just never ends with the government, and it just never ends. This vicious cycle.
It always comes back to
a conservative. I'm against.
State.
I'm against all of that, and I'm just against it all. And so yeah, I mean.
That's just because you get so many speeding tickets, Gene.
Thank God. I'm not a speeder. I'm a troller.
A troller?
You've seen my Tic Tac. You don't go speeding in the Tic Tac.
I know.
Anyway,
we got 1 minute left. I want to thank the people that have been listening to KLEAN Radio. I'm glad I'm back in the studio.
Yay.
It was great to see everybody again.
Thanks for having
me
on,
You look great,
guys.
by the way.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for
Keep
covering.
that diet
Thank you
up.
for my life,
Yeah.
both of you. Thank you.
And thank you, Jesse, behind the boards, Patrick, for doing this, Caroline, for all your help. Thank you, everybody
Judah,
out there.
who's never missed a show.
Never missed a show.
Unbelievable.
Knock on Jennifer. And the discussion continues at KLEANradio.com. We have an amazing guest lined up for next week, so stay tuned.
Yay.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? KLEAN Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to KLEAN Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, KLEANTreatmentCenter.com.